Aye, kuwe kuwa madue.
Aye, kuwe amadue.
Aye, kuwe kuwa madue.
Aye, kuwe amadue.
Do you have siblings?
I have a younger brother, and I have two sisters. And I also have an older sister from my mom's first marriage.
Interesting. What was that dynamic like in the house as you were growing up?
Well, I was the oldest, so I could do no wrong. I also was the moderator of the house. So if others were in trouble or if they were acting out, I was the person who was supposed to step in to help them keep in line. And an example of that was whenever we would eat, it was my job to eat first or to finish all my food so that if my other siblings didn't eat all of theirs, I was going to eat it. And that was our way of not wasting. Okay, so I would gobble through my food, and then I'm looking at my sister to make sure she gets through hers, and if she doesn't, I'm going to eat it. That kind of thing.
Wow.
So that was my role.
Okay. Okay. What or who influenced you the most as a child?
Easily my mother and my father. My father had a second grade education. My mother never stepped into any school, so she had no education. But my father was a very hard worker. There were times when he would have 3 jobs, ex-military, and what he influenced me around were things like your responsibilities as a father, things like putting bread on the table, so to speak, but also honoring others. I grew up in a household where there was no way you referred to anybody that was older than you by first names. I had lots of aunts and uncles. In fact, everybody was an aunt, everybody was an uncle. And it influenced me in such a way that I raised my own daughter. Until this day, she's now 36. She has lots of aunts and uncles, people that she refers to from that way, because she understands that it's a way to be respectful. And when I came to California, one of my experiences were little kids calling me by my first name. And you know, I would just ruffle because I knew that nobody said anything to them about the honoring your elders. I also got lots from my mother. My mother raised me to be somebody's partner, to eventually be a father, to be somebody who was taking care of things, but also knew how to cook, knew how to iron, knew how to sew, and also knew how to take out the garbage, who knew how to work on the cars, who knew how to do yard work. And she always made it clear that your father was providing for us, and that allowed her the opportunity to spend a lot of time with the kids, to go to sporting events, to manage us on a daily basis, but that they were a team raising us.
It sounds very important, just the concept of teamwork being instilled from it sounds like a very early age.
Yeah.
So what would you say, or who would you say influenced you the most as a child?
Man, I'd have to say musicians like Sam Cooke, Jackie Wilson, you know, Smokey Robinson, the Miracles, because we were always, you know, listening to music at that time. And Sam Cooke, I got a special vibe with. You know, I've always liked his voice. I tend to sing like him. You know, later on in life, I would actually meet his dad, Bishop Cooke,
Wow.
who shared some insight on the plot to murder Sam Cooke. I would say also my mother, for sure. She was a single mom of 4 boys, you know, in LA. And so just watching her work ethic, watching her buy her first property, gave me some structure. I'd say my uncle, her younger brother, who taught me to go into houses, my first plumbing gigs, and taught me how to do carpentry and drywall, and wore me out on roofing, because my job was always to carry the rolls up the ladder and mess with that tar at the time. That's what we worked with. So, I learned to have a real hard work ethic, I believe, from them. Certainly my older brother. My older brother taught me to question things, not necessarily accept what's on the plate, let alone accept the table. So he helped me to understand, I think, to question early on and to critically analyze things early on. So not only would we question the plate that was put in front of us, but the table that it was set on and the structure that held that plate. And we did the same thing with our experience being Catholics, because we grew up Catholics. We were Catholics because our mother's family was Catholic.
Interesting.
But we had a critical analysis of Catholicism, and still do, all the way back then.
Wow. Mm-hmm. And what influenced you, or who influenced you the most as a child?
I mean, I was closest to my mother growing up, you know what I mean? Like, just her spirit, really, I resonated with it as a child, But my grandfather, as a male figure, was, my inspiration. He was, the person that took us fishing. Okay. He was the person that took us camping. He was the person that took us to our first A's game, our first Warrior games when the seats was $5, and nobody was coming to see the Warriors, But just the overall experience of, some of those rites of passages that you go through as a young man, I was able to experience that with my grandfather, So he definitely inspired me because he had the stuff together. Mm-hmm. He had the beautiful home, he had the car, the boat, the van, every holiday and every instance of the family coming together was always at his house. He had stuff set up for the children, with the pool tables and the workout benches and so he was just this multifaceted individual, who was very brilliant, and I really valued and admired his spirit and the way that he moved,
Did he live in West Oakland?
No, actually he lived in Berkeley. So he was a part of that group of folks that moved out of the South and came out here, last train stop, so to speak. A brilliant thing about my grandfather is that he came from Galveston, and that's the site of Juneteenth, and so he came out of this really large African Native American tribe. My great grandmother, long ponytails going down, headdress, like everything, and so he comes from that history, but he was very brilliant. He went to Cal Berkeley, like back in the 40s, and he really instilled a lot of things in my aunties. He had 4 daughters, and all of my aunties were able to transition from high school and go on to Ivy League schools, and mostly back east, to be honest with you. One auntie went to Columbia, got a full ride to Columbia as a rider. Another auntie went to Pratt, and she's doing really big in New York right now. Has been a really influential individual in that tri-state area, and outside of there. My mother, who was the youngest, she graduated when she was 16, 15 from Berkeley High and got a full ride to NYU. So he was really like big on, instilling, academia, but also just basic tools, like how to use a tool, how to, work with your hands. And so they was, fixing things and, electricity and, building things with the hands and all. Like, he didn't believe in, because you're a girl, you can't do what you need to do. So he just gave his family a lot, and I really appreciated, admired, and valued the way in which he showed up.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned earlier going from West Oakland to East Oakland, having your grandfather around in Berkeley. Was it primarily just you in the house with your mother, or what was
No, I had 2 brothers. I have two brothers, and we're all back to back to back. You know what I'm saying? It's like a stair step. So I grew up with it was me and the boys, you know, Akitunde boys, and you know, that was a blessing too, you know, just to have other brothers. You know, we could be outside playing for hours. You know, we grew up in that play outside era, you know, where we had the tire swing and the bicycles, and we create games and, you know, all type of stuff. But those were my play buddies, you know, my brothers.
I hear that. Do you have any siblings?
I have, I do, yep. I have a sister who I grew up with, an older sister, 2.5 years older than me. And I also have a brother who lives in Seattle, a half brother. My dad, he moved from Cleveland to Seattle when I was 1, and he had my brother. And I've gotten close to him, especially since I've been out here on the West Coast. I have gotten real close to him, and I consider him my closest sibling now. And then I also have an adopted sister who my mom adopted after I moved out here to California. And so I've gotten to know her, you know, a little bit from distance. She lives in Tennessee. So yeah, my family's all spread out. Yeah.
What are some of the lessons that you've learned from family?
Yeah. I'll say this. I've learned a lot more about my family in recent years. My mom passed in 2017, and that's really accelerated my desire to forge relationships with my dad's side of the family especially. And so I've met a lot of cousins, aunties, uncle, well, not really so many uncles. Yeah, some uncles, but a lot of cousins especially. And first of all, I'm real proud of my family. You know, we are a family full of people who we're survivors, you know, whatever circumstances we've been put in. I got family thriving all over this country. I got family thriving in Seattle, family thriving on the East Coast in the DC area, thriving in Atlanta, thriving in Michigan, thriving in Cleveland, Texas, out here in the Bay. And it's just great to know that my family generally is doing really well, that we're thriving, and just how much love they have for me and we have for each other is something that I wish I'd have had more of growing up. And anytime you get it, it feels good.
Yeah. It sounds like you've made a lot more of a concerted effort as you turn into adult to really foster those relationships.
Yeah, no doubt. When I lost my mom, it was very abrupt. I really feel like I started, after getting over the initial grief, you know, the first year or so, I feel like that's really when something switched for me. This was in my late 30s. Something I feel like really switched for me, where I really started growing into my manhood, and really feeling like, okay, like I'm not someone's son anymore. And that was something real deep to let sink in, to not feel like a son. Like it's the most fundamental persona that I had. I think that we all have. Until we don't have it anymore, you know. I'm used to being a friend. I'm used to being a father now. I'm used to being a husband. I was used to being a son first, but not being one anymore. I really started feeling like I'm really coming into my manhood and really asking myself, what can I do? What can I do with my skills? What can I do with what I've been given, the blessings that I have? And you know, one of the things I wanted to do is just, you know, get closer to my family. So that's been really meaningful. Excellent.
Who or what influenced you the most as a kid?
Yeah.
Because you did mention just having all these different dynamics around you. Is there maybe someone in particular, maybe, you know, whether it's family or whoever? Like, was there someone that you felt like, okay, they get this? You know?
Yeah, I mean, family was a huge home base for me. I have mother, father, little sister, big brother. That was our household. And I think especially because we were a black family in a predominantly white neighborhood, that as I navigated the world, that was my home base and touch point. Like the dinner table, really. I feel like that was a place where, one, you're expected to be. Like that was one of the unspoken rules for the most part. Sometimes it needed to be spoken, but it was pretty well understood. And that was understood to be a place where, you could kind of come in a mood or come quiet or whatever, but for the most part, it was how was the day, what happened, and so that was a space where I think I made a lot of meaning making, made a lot of sense of things. Again, having an older brother who was navigating some of these things a little bit ahead of me, felt like a kind of a great luxury. I was able to see through his eyes and through his steps and missteps, like where the walls were, what the parameters were in our household, out in the world, and what could run you into issues, what could make for some smooth sailing. So yeah, I think my family was that primary touch point. And then the neighborhood I grew up in, pretty randomly, there was a large cohort of boys about my age. Most of them were a year older, and like myself, a handful of them had older brothers who were 2 or 3 years older. So we had a little bike gang, I mean, from young, and we were close to Emerson Elementary, so that was like, that's the blacktop. We're out there playing football, basketball, and at that point it wasn't a lot of soccer, home run derby, but like that group of friends, I feel like how we moved through the neighborhood. Sometimes I'd like try to explain it like Sandlot or something like that, right, where it's just like a little bit old-timey throwback of like meet at the park and then we'll kind of figure out where it goes from there. But exploring the city on bikes, getting into this and that at a pretty young age, especially with the older brothers around, hanging out at 7-Eleven, hoping they would come by so they could buy us beer, and like getting back on the bikes and rocking it. So I feel like that group of friends, I watched the Warriors game with one of them last night, and so that was a big influence. And then sports, played a lot of sports coming up. So Jerry Rice was my #1 hero coming up, looked up to that dude, and just like getting very active, like whenever there was a dull moment, trying to be out playing something. So yeah, those are some of the influences, especially from the earlier side before I was really getting into books and some of the more intellectual role models, which came a little bit later.
I hear that. What are some lessons that you learned from family?
At the end of the day, that's what you have, family, and family really is as strong as what you put into it, I've learned good things and not so good things from family. I've learned that secrets are no good, because we have women in our family who keep a lot of secrets, and I've learned the devastating nature of keeping secrets. I've learned also that family is a source of strength. At the end of the day, that's who's going to be there for you. Now, I've also learned that you don't choose your family, right? But you can choose your friends. And you have friends also who can be like family, right? Who are really there for you, who will have your back at the end of the day, and that's very important. I've learned to really, it's like a gardener, right? Just trying to till the weeds, having my own family, making sure that there's love there, making sure that you're doing the best that you can do, under the circumstances, to make sure your children know that they are loved. And that means a number of different things. There's discipline involved in that. There's having fun, right, involved in that. So I know I watched my mom work a lot. Like I said, she raised 4 boys in South Central. And that's, that's not an easy thing to do. I watched my mom go out and argue with police and go toe to toe when cops wanted to attack us. And, so it's multifaceted, but family is what you have. Family is important. Charity certainly begins at home. And you go the extra mile for your family members. Family will also teach you that you have to draw healthy boundaries in order to keep that family balanced, right? And keep you in love with your family.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a very important aspect of that. Understanding what those boundaries are and being able to communicate them, and whether they're received well or not. Excuse me. Whether they're received well or not, just having that sense to speak about it so that they can understand, and you can move on in one way. So I definitely think that's important. What are you most proud of?
Probably my daughter, who is a lesbian woman who's married to another woman, who has a son that I get to take care of in childcare all day on Mondays, and I share it with my wife on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. I think her life, her journey, her experiences, she's always made me very proud. And I also I'm learning a lot from her. I've actually learned what true courage is, both in terms of her being who she is, a feminist, a black woman, a mom, a partner, but also because when she was really early, she had a physical ailment. She had something called bilateral hip dysphagia. And it's a thing where your femur comes out of your hip socket, and it causes quite a bit of pain. And it was not diagnosed in my daughter when she was a baby, because it could have been corrected when that happened. But at age 5 or 6, she was running track. And she was actually having pain. She'd run a sprint, and then afterwards she'd be limping a little, and we'd always ask about it, and she'd say, it just hurts a little and it goes away, that kind of thing. And then later we found out what it was, and she had to have bilateral hip surgery. And she had to have 2 surgeries. And each time they would sort of crack one hip and then they would shift it so that it would grow together in a different shape, and that would keep our hip socket in her hip. And her first surgery, she had to have a waist down to ankle a cast. And she was in a lot of pain. But I remember how courageous she was and how strong she was. And I remember 2 weeks after she would take her cast off, she was back on the basketball court trying to play basketball. Her muscles had pretty much atrophied, but she was running up and down the court. So I learned a lot about courage. And she had to go through that twice, because she had to have 2 separate surgeries. So I think my biggest accomplishment was actually participating and supporting the development of my daughter, and being very proud of her and learning what it really means to be courageous.
Yeah, oh, that's very powerful.